store bought for Rebus me again, Margaret. I'm gonna break your fucking head.
Sorry it took me so long to get this guide out. Konami keeps dropping
banger after banger after banger
in all of these boxes, so we never had time to do Monarch, but thankfully they also just released a new support card for Monarchs that makes this deck so much better at playing through interruptions. Monarchs is based on tribute summoning and removing the opponent's cards, but tribute summoning has a lot of inherent weaknesses. The fact that you have to get out the tribute fodder on board, the fact that the tribute summons are counted as normal summons, the fact you actually have to tribute the monster in hand, and the fact that the on-summon effects won't be helpful if we can only summon on the main phases anyway. This deck solves all of those problems, so let's just get into it. There are a hell of a lot of Monarchs in the game, and we gotta accept the fact that we can't play them all. We gotta be really decisive when the Monarchs we choose. So I'm gonna let you know the best ones you should use, and I'll tell you which ones are bait, since some of them seem really good but are just no good at all. Monarchs we intend on summoning in this deck are Erebus, the Underworld Monarch, and Caius, the Mega Monarch. Erebus, when tribute summoned, will send 2 Monarch back rows to the grave in order to shuffle an opponent's card from field or to their hand into the deck. This removal doesn't target at all, and since it shuffles the card into the deck, it also plays around destruction protection. It's also very important that Erebus sends Monarch back row from deck to grave, as a lot of Monarch back row actually has grave effects. Mega Caius, on tribute summon, will target any card on the field and banish it, but if that card happens to be a dark monster, then it also burns the opponent for 500. Then it also banishes all copies of that card from the opponent's hand, deck, extra deck, and graveyard. This card only targets a card, so you could instead play the level 6 Caius if you wanted to, since it will require 1 less tribute to mostly do the same thing. However, the benefit of Mega Caius is that if you tributed a dark monster to summon him, he will target 2 cards instead of just 1. Simply being removal upon tribute summon is pretty cool for breaking boards. However, in this deck we can actually tribute summon on the opponent's turn using our trap card, Escalation of the Monarchs. This trap card lets us tribute summon during the opponent's main phase and battle phase, meaning that as long as we can get the tribute fodder out, we'll be able to non-target shuffle an opponent's card from hand or field to the deck with Erebus during their turn, or destroy 2 of their cards during their turn. Interrupting plays with such powerful removal is the main game plan of this deck, so these 2 are the best for it. Mega Caius and Erebus also have the added benefit that you can tribute summon them using only 1 tribute summon monster instead of the full tribute requirement of true tributes for level 8s. So we could potentially summon Erebus on our own turn to shuffle a card from their hand into the deck, and then on their turn with Escalation tribute summon that Erebus to summon Mega Caius, or on our turn we could summon Mega Caius to break their board, and on their turn summon with Escalation. We can just tribute the Mega Caius to summon Erebus to non-target shuffle a card from their field into the deck. You could even Mega Caius into Mega Caius, or Erebus into Erebus, as long as their tribute fodder is a tribute summoned monster. This is repeatable too, since Erebus has a grave effect to discard a Monarch back row in order to add one of your Monarchs from the grave back to hand, including itself. We are hoping that through gradually removing the opponent's cards on our turn and our opponent's turn, we can stop them from killing us and gradually run them out of cards, so we can have enough card advantage to just win the game. If you don't have Mega Caius, it is an event card, so you should be able to use some UR tickets, but if you would prefer to use another Monarch that only takes 1 tribute to summon, that would be understandable. Riser targets a card and puts it on top of the opponent's deck, and regular Caius targets 1 card on the field and banishes it, and burns the opponent for 500 if it's a dark monster, just the same as Mega Caius, except it doesn't banish additional copies of dark monsters, and it doesn't get to target 2 cards if tributing a dark monster to summon it. This deck is just really good at getting out 2 tribute materials for our Monarch, so as long as we can get out 2 tribute fodders 1 time for our first Monarch, then we can just use our existing Monarchs to tribute summon our other Monarchs to make it nice and easy, and the majority of the monsters in this deck are dark attributes, so Caius will most likely always be banishing 2 cards. Some of you watching this video might be angrily typing in the comments already, because I haven't talked at all about Aether the Heavenly Monarch. Context: Aether has the quick effect to banish a Monarch back row from your grave to immediately tribute summon herself. So without even having Escalation on the field, she can tribute summon herself. But unlike Caius and Erebus, she doesn't actually remove cards from the opponent, but instead she summons a monster with a Monarch stats of 2400 or more attack and 1000 defense from the deck, but returns it to the hand on end phase. The idea is that once you special summon the Monarch from the deck, it can activate its on summon effect to get rid of an opponent's card, basically meaning Aether is like an Escalation that you don't have to actually put on the field. The 2 issues with that is that Escalation is searchable, so you can more easily rely on it, and the Monarchs themselves only trigger when they are normal summoned, not when they are special summoned, so the Aether won't even be interrupting the opponent this way, unless you play one of the 2 Monarchs that break that rule. Kuraz, the Light Monarch, if normal or special summoned, can target 2 cards to destroy them. That would be really great to summon from the deck with Aether. The only issue is that Kuraz also lets the opponent draw cards equal to the amount of their cards that you destroyed with that effect. So, Cool that you could get rid of 2 of their cards, but they're going to get a fresh 2 cards anyway, so this isn't really worth playing. Delg, the Dark Monarch on normal special summon, can banish 2 cards from the opponent's grave. That's pretty cool, but it's not very main deckable, so it's not every deck cares if you banish cards from their grave. But that effect of Delg to just banish might make itself an Aether worth putting into your side deck if banishing cards from the opponent's grave would be a good strategy against your opponent in a tournament. Regardless, we can always rely on escalation because we can search for it, and we can always guarantee that Erebus and Mega Caius are going to be taking cards away from the opponent, which is what we need in this deck. So, cool, we can summon Mega Caius and Erebus on our opponent's turn to get rid of their cards, but we still have to actually get the tribute materials on the field to do so. The cards we play in this deck to make that possible are Dae, the Heavenly Squire, Eidos, the Underworld Squire, Untitled, the Prime Monarch, and the Monarch Stormforth. There's a lot of stuff, because we're definitely going to need multiple ways to get tributes on board, in case the opponent tries to interrupt us by getting rid of our tribute materials. Dae, the Heavenly Squire on summon, will special summon a monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense from the deck, so she will summon Eidos, who has those stats. And Eidos on summon will grant you a bonus tribute summon that turn, so you could use up your normal summon for Dae and still end up being able to tribute summon that turn because of the Eidos she summons from the deck. Boom! 2 tribute materials immediately. If Dae gets negated though, you're still going to want to use one of your other methods to get a second tribute fodder so that you can tribute summon on the opponent's turn still with escalation. Perhaps the coolest way this deck can get a bonus monster as a tribute material is with the Monarch Stormforth. It's a quick play spell that by activating it lets you use one of your opponent's monsters as tribute material during that turn. So during your turn you could activate this if you only have 1 tribute fodder on your side of the field so that you can tribute one of the opponent's monsters as well as your monster to summon one of your monarchs. The best part about this is that the opponent can't respond to their own monster being tributed, so they have to negate this spell, otherwise any of their monsters could be tributed for a tribute summon. During the opponent's turn you could have Stormforth set and escalation. You could activate the Stormforth, then use escalation's effect to tribute summon on their turn, and since you activated Stormforth on that turn, you can tribute one of their monsters in the middle of their plays. Another great way to get another tribute fodder on the field is the Prime Monarch. It's a continuous trap, but its on-field effect isn't really relevant to this deck's game plan, so you can go ahead and read that in your own time. The main thing about this card is you can banish a Monarch back row from the grave in order to special summon itself from the grave as a monster with 1000 attack and 2400 defense. It's great for survivability, and it's great to have another special summon to give you tribute fodder. This is one of the back row that you want to send to the grave in order to activate Erebus' effect to shuffle an opponent's card into the deck, so you have more special summons available as the game goes on. You could even use the Prime Monarch to banish a Monarch Stormforth that you used earlier to summon itself, and then alongside that Prime Monarch on the field, you could use Eidos' Grave effect to banish itself to special summon a Dae from the grave, because a Dae when sent to grave will add a banished Monarch back row to your hand. So you're going to get guaranteed materials from Eidos and Prime Monarch, but you're also able to recycle your powerful Monarch back row like the Stormforth, or even an escalation if the opponent banishes it with a Cosmic Cyclone, or if they destroy your escalation, you could banish it with the Prime Monarch the same way you'd banish Stormforth with the Prime Monarch. The cogs are turning in your brain now. Look at the synergy we got going on. The newest card from this deck is Untitled. It just came out in an event, and it's a pendulum monster with the pendulum scale effect that if you don't have any cards in your extra deck, it can destroy itself in order to let you draw a card. Drawing a card is amazing for this deck's consistency, and since it's a pendulum card, being destroyed puts it face up in the extra deck instead of the grave. But also if it's in your extra deck face up and the only card in your extra deck, you get to special summon it to your extra monster zone, and if it leaves the field you banish it. That way, when it's banished instead of sent to the grave, if you get another copy of it, you'll still be able to activate it since you won't have any monsters in your extra deck. This deck doesn't really have much in the way of things to do with the extra deck anyway, so you can play no cards in your extra deck to get a free special summon that also draws you a card. I must say though that if you have this, you have to use it before you use Dae and Eidos, because Dae and Eidos both lock you out of summoning from the extra deck after you use the other effects. So with Untitled being the only extra deck summon we are going to do in this deck, we should make sure to do it first. It's also worth noting that if you have one of your methods of getting another tribute and you have an Eidos, then you can just normal summon the Eidos itself and it will give you that bonus tribute summon. So even though you'd prefer to summon a Dae, having Eidos in hand with another method to get that tribute fodder is still good. All of these ways to get tribute fodder are all well and good, but how are we going to consistently get access to escalation to tribute summon on the opponent's turn? How are we going to be able to see our monarchs in hand when we need them? How are we going to get the Prime Monarch engraved to revive his tribute fodder? How can we rely on Monarch Stormforth when it's limited to 1? All of these problems are solved by 2 consistency cards of this deck, Tenacity of the Monarchs and Pantheism of the Monarchs. First of all, Tenacity of the Monarch can reveal a Monarch monster in your hand in order to search for any Monarch back row. Nice and easy, as long as you have a Mega Caius or Erebus, both of which we play 3 of for max consistency, then you can reveal them with tenacity to search for escalation, so we can tribute summon them on the opponent's turn, or Stormforth if we need to tribute an opponent's monster, or even the Prime Monarch if we can discard it to the grave somehow for its grave effect. Pantheism of the Monarchs can discard a Monarch back row in order to draw 2 cards, so that we can use the Prime Monarch we use as discard fodder, but the main thing is, with this effect, is that we draw 2 cards to help us draw into our Monarchs, and draw into the cards that can help us get our tribute fodder on the field. It can also banish itself from the grave to pick 3 Monarch back row in our deck and randomly add 1 to our hand. The fact that it's random isn't great, however we can cheat that process by picking 3 copies of Tenacity, so we can guarantee that we can get that Tenacity, so the Tenacity will search for the exact back row we need without it being random. If we already have Tenacity, then the Pantheism can just search something to reveal for its effect. The thing is, Pantheism isn't actually a card that's in the game properly yet, so in order to use it, we have to play the skill Pantheist Revelation, which puts 3 copies of Pantheism into your deck at the start of the duel, meaning that at the bare minimum, your deck is going to be 23 cards. The skill will only activate if your deck contains at least 6 Monarch stat monsters and at least 6 Monarch back row. That's not a problem though, for consistency reasons, 6 Monarchs is the best odds for us to both consistently get the Monarchs we need into our hand, and also not brick on having too many Monarchs in our hand. When it comes to the back row, we already want to play a bare minimum of 6 with a 3 Tenacity to guarantee we get the Tenacity from Pantheism's effect, the 1 Escalation, the 1 Stormforth, the 1 Prime Monarch. It's important to keep in mind too that Erebus can send Pantheism from deck to grave if we really need that grave effect search. This is what the deck looks like. We have our 6 total Monarchs with a 3 Erebus, which is great for removal and graveyard setup, and the 3 Caius, which is the best Monarch when it comes to removing the opponent's cards, since it almost always banishes 2 cards. These are definitely the best 2 Monarchs, but if you want to do anything differently, then at the very least you need to have 3 Erebus because of that graveyard setup part of its effect. You have the 6 Monarchs back row of 3 Tenacity, 1 of each of the rest, except in here I actually have a second copy of the Prime Monarch because it can be good to get to hand to discard with Pantheism, and because of the fact that it banishing a Monarch back row so that you can get it back with a Dae is the main way that we can stay in the grind game when our opponent gets rid of escalation. It's good to play a second Prime in case the opponent can also banish that Prime. 3 Uncommon Freet because we want to draw into it and it gives us a draw when we use it, so it's great for both consistency and tribute fodder. 3 Dae so that we can open it, and 1 Eidos because it's just going to be summoned from the deck anyway. I'd understand if you wanted to play a second Eidos, if you wanted to get off a Dae's on summon effect a second time, and if you wanted to do that you could cut the second copy of Prime Monarch. We obviously don't play an extra deck at all because of Uncommon Freet, a Dae, Eidos, and the Stormforth. They all don't want you to use the extra deck at all, and Uncommon Freet most of all can't be used at all if you have an extra deck. Most of the time when a deck doesn't use the extra deck, we should put an extra deck there regardless, just in case a situation comes up that we might be able to use it, or at least to trick the opponent into thinking that we can use it, but the skill activates at the start of the duel so the opponent won't be under any illusion that we are playing anything other than Monarchs, and simply having cards in the extra deck at all turns off Uncommon Freet, so it's in our best interest to actively put nothing there. This deck list I feel is pretty perfect and doesn't really need anything to change. People might be upset that I don't believe Aether is very good in this deck in Duel Links, but making the opponent draw cards with Kuras just isn't a great strategy, and since we can't search for Aether, we can't rely on it that much. But we can rely on having just any Monarch that gives us removal, alongside the Escalation, because the Escalation is searchable. And playing 3 Mega Caius and 3 Erebus, we are basically playing 6 copies of the same functioning card. They are different, but just think of them as a Monarch that removes a card without destroying, because that's what they both do, with Erebus also setting up the graveyard and Mega Caius also removing an additional card. At the end of the day though, I'm not here to tell you how to build your deck, I'm just here to show you how to play it, so let's just get into the replay, shall we? Alright, so the first game here is against Sulfur Chords, and I do have to say about Monarchs, if you didn't get it already, this isn't one of those build a board, break a board type of decks, you know what I mean? This is a very grindy kind of resource management control deck, you know? So you're mainly focusing on survival and gradually removing the opponent's cards. But anyway, our hand doesn't have any consistency. Alright, we have a way to tribute summon, but we don't have a way to get to our Escalation of the Monarchs, which is going to how we break the opponent's board on their turn. So we're going to use the Uncommon Freet here, destroy itself to draw a card. We get a Pantheism, fantastic. But in order to thin the deck first, I'm going to use a Dae and get out an Eidos. It's just going to make us get another tribute summon here. We're going to go into Erebus, sending, importantly, a Pantheism so we can use that grave effect, and a Prime Monarch so we can revive it, okay? And we're going to send this back into the deck because we're trying to break board, you know, do some damage here. We're going to use the Pantheism and reveal 3 copies of Tenacity of the Monarchs because that's the real thing we need here. We're going to be able to activate that, use Erebus to get ourselves an Escalation. Fantastic. Now we have an interruption. Now we can set that, but before we end our turn and before we attack, use the Prime Monarch, revive itself by banishing that Tenacity. We can also use the Eidos to revive the a Dae. This way, not only do we have survivability by having more monsters on board, but if a Dae dies for whatever reason or is used as tribute fodder, we can add back the Pantheism or the Tenacity if we want, so we can use it next turn. Alright, so we can just attack in. We don't have lethal, but we still have a lot of damage here. I'm going to flip up the escalation so I can use it whenever I want. He's going to summon here. He's going to get that field spell to be able to destroy us. But before he does that, I'm going to use the escalation to tribute only the Erebus to summon Caius the Mega Monarch, which is going to destroy his field spell and his monster. However, he normal summons Madolche Magellin, and he's about to do a full Madolche combo here. I'm just going to turn on fast forward so you don't have to see the entire thing. But he is going to be screwing me over here, getting rid of all the things in my graveyard. He's also going to be breaking my board, getting rid of my Caius and my escalation here, and he's going to have a lot of monsters on board, but because of the fact that he destroys my Dae, I get to add back the Tenacity, so I am back in business. Okay, he got rid of my escalation, putting it into the deck, but I can get it right back, baby. So he destroys me, but he doesn't have game. Check it out though. You see how easy it is to win the game. Alright, Tenacity is going to reveal the Erebus searching the Monarch Stormforth. Using the Monarch Stormforth, I could activate it, right, and then I could banish the Stormforth itself from the grave with my Prime Monarch to summon itself, and I'd have two materials on the field, that being one of his monsters and that being my own Prime Monarch. Tribute summon the Caius, burn them for 500 and attacking for game. That's easy GG's, but he knows. He saw me search for the Monarch Stormforth. He knows how this works. He scoops it up. GG's. Alright, so my opponent is going first here with Tenyi, starting off with an Ashuna. My hand is not very good. Alright, I don't actually have a way to get tributes out. I have a way to get one tribute out, that being the Monarch Stormforth. That's great. I just need a way to get a second tribute. That's all, you know what I mean? But yeah, he's going to be able to set up all three of the protective Tenyis. He's already got Shatana, now he's got Nahada, now he's got Mapura, and he goes right into the Berserker of the Tenyi. So now he has all three forms of protection in his grave, and one card in hand. Alright, what could I possibly do about this? So, now, thank goodness, I needed to top deck some type of consistency. Now I've got Pantheism of the Monarchs. I can discard my Prismatic Prime Monarch, of course, because why would I discard the other one? And I can activate this Monarch Stormforth. Now I can banish that Monarch Stormforth to summon my Prime Monarch.
If you Stormforth for Rebus me again, Margaret, I'm gonna break your fucking head.
And tribute summon my Erebus, use its effect to send two to the grave, send a card from their hand into the deck. He's got nothing left. He just poured his whole heart and soul into this play, and now he has absolutely nothing. So now I can use Pantheism, search for a Pantheism, Tenacity, and Tenacity, hoping to get a Tenacity for a follow-up. I already have the escalation, but anyway, I'm going to use a Tenacity to search for another Pantheism. Pantheism can then draw two by discarding the other Prime Monarch. I can use Anka Mofrit, oh my goodness, draw a card. I cannot summon it, of course, because this Monarch Stormforth will prevent me from summoning from the extra deck the turn I use it, but it's still drawing a card, bruh. I got Escalation of the Monarch and a grip full of Monarchs, bro. Even if he does something, I can just interrupt it. I attack in. What's he got? He draws a card. Escalation. Tribute summon Caius. Get rid of that remaining card. Burn him for 500. My turn. He's not even gonna let me attack, bro. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that Monarchs is the next big meta threat. It isn't, because right now all we have is that the deck functions properly and it works well. But what it does do is really strong, and more importantly, a hell of a lot of fun. So definitely try out this deck if you have all the cards for it. Big shout out to Paptrix Duel Links. He's been the pioneer for Monarchs for a long time in this game, and some of the deck building theory that I incorporated into my Monarch version is based on things I learned from his deck building theory on the deck. He also posts regular updates to decks on his channel, and he's a really spicy deck builder, so make sure you subscribe to him if you haven't already, and hit the bell to check out his streams too, because they're really engaging. Let us know how you guys feel about Monarchs. Let us know which Monarch is your favorite. If you have any questions about the deck or in general, be sure to leave them in the comments and we can talk about it. And if you like the video, then slap like now, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell to get notified every time we make a new video. Have yourselves a good one, guys, and I've been Undead from Team 6K, signing out.
Hey, why they gotta hate on me? I done got me 250,000 views and they still saying they low key. They ain't wanna come work with the kid, but I'm flexing with Zay on beats. How they ask for a spot at the gym, but they leave all the weight on me. I don't ask them to wait on me. They would ask where they gon' be with a song if they wanted the weatherman. I ain't asking to pay no fees. She was homeless and needed a spot. I ain't ask her to pay no lease. I ain't ask her to say no please. I ain't ask her to make no cheese. Scream fake, but it ain't on me. Got clean, so it ain't no streets. Why green if it ain't no keeps? Brought cream, so it ain't no beef. My team say it ain't no chief. My demon, they hang on me. They seemingly ain't no peace. I seen him, he ain't no beast. For real.